Well, hi everybody. My name is Fahd Shaaban. I'm Senior Director of Product at Crownpeak. And this session here is about governing the digital experience and whatever that means. So we're gonna dissect that, we're gonna decompose that together today. So throughout all of the sessions and all of the breakouts and all of the interactions that we have for you, we're talking about governance. And the focus primarily is gonna be on our DQM and our Evidon solutions. But we also have another offering from Crownpeak, what we call DXM, or digital experience. And so we're going to review what that means. What is DXM? We're going to talk about how DXM plays a role in governance. We'll give you a quick demo, and then we'll open it up for questions after. Okay? Are we good? Yeah. All right. So just to give you a sense of what governance is and what DXM is. So Crownpeak offers 3 distinct products. We offer our digital quality management solution, DQM, which many of you are familiar with. We also offer our Evidon suite of tools, consent and monitoring, tag auditing, tag monitoring, and those specific capabilities. But we also have our flagship product. Crownpeak has always been in the business of managing content. So content management and digital experience management is what we're going to be talking about today. Okay? So DQM, Evidon, and DXM. All right, so what is DXM? DXM stands for Digital Experience Management. It is the only SaaS platform that combines creating and managing the digital experience with maintaining the quality of that experience, and of course applying a layer of governance over all of it. Okay? It's a platform for marketers and technologists to create the best digital experience possible. Just very, very briefly, you're going to hear this a lot today, but we're fast, easy to use, built to scale. Many of our customers are able to launch sites in as little as 6 weeks. Many of our customers are able to create and publish new content in an easy to use, intuitive experience. Requires absolutely no coding knowledge whatsoever to create a really robust and scalable experience that's built to scale. To give you a sense of highlighting some features: web content management, personalization, testing and targeting, quality management. We'll actually see a sense of what quality management means in the context of authoring and managing your digital experience. Crownpeak offers full stack hosting for delivery of your content, and it's all offered in the cloud software as a service. Social media management and a plethora of integrations that you can leverage and take advantage of with Crownpeak. Okay? So let's dive in and let's talk about governance, because really that's the theme of today, right? So what I'm going to walk you through now is just a few points that I want to highlight, and then right after we'll do a quick demo just to give you a sense of what it all means. So with Crownpeak, multi-site model management is really at the core of governance. The ability to define that experience, define it once, and be able to leverage it time and time again to create these patterns that allow you to create that consistent experience every single time. So we have something that's called a site builder, where you can define and create your patterns, typically a collection of related sites, either because they relate based on locale, if you're translating them or localizing them, or if they share a common brand, or they could be just a cookie cutter type of a pattern that you can use again and again to create microsites or any type of experience that you're looking for. And of course, along with that, the ability to monitor, the ability to report on, the ability to have a sense of what's going on with all of these different experiences. So again, multi-site model management is at the core of governance within DXM. Creating users and defining roles, right? Being able to dictate and define exactly who can do what within your platform, and the ability to define these different roles. And what Crownpeak gives you is granular control. You're able to define exactly what the user can do based on the role or roles that they're assigned. But that's not enough. Permissions also go all the way down to the content itself. So it's one thing to be an author. It's one thing to be an administrator. But the question is, what are you administering, right? What are you authoring and where? And what rights do you have in the context of your content? And so with Crownpeak, we're able to turn on and off all types of permissions at the content level, whether it be an actual page, an artifact, it could be a folder or a container, a site, a section of a site, you name it, you have control over who can do what and where. And then what about the when? The when is another factor, right? So what, where, and when. With workflow, you're able to dictate really the life cycle of your content, right? And that life cycle changes from at the very early stages of your content being in a draft state, all the way to being sent for approval, and then being staged and sent to production. With Crownpeak, you're able to dictate who can do what when. So a content author, for example, can create content, they can edit that content, but as soon as they submit it for editing, they're locked out, right? Someone has to send it back to them for any updates that are required. If the content has made its way to production, no one can touch it. No one can touch it. You have to branch it first if you want to make any changes to that content. So workflow and governance play hand in hand together in this case. Now, as you're making changes to your content, one of the things that we often get asked about and our customers really care about is the ability to version the content and being able to compare what's happening to your content from a governance perspective, the ability to roll back to a previous version anytime, right? So you have control over your content at all stages, at all states. And you can undo, you can go back to a previous version if you so choose. And then finally, not only are we recording the content, but we're recording all interactions. So from an auditing perspective, again, a key value from a governance concern, everything is being recorded in Crownpeak. Not only who's opening what and who's managing the content and making updates, who's even viewing the content, who's previewing that page and why are they previewing it. So all that information is recorded and tracked. And of course, reports are available for you as administrators to know exactly what's happening with your experience. And much more. There's much more. So you're probably like, what, right? Like what? So that's the transition to the demo, all right? That's the like what. So let's go ahead and open this up. And do forgive me if the Wi-Fi doesn't play nice with me. So here we are. This is DXM. If you've never seen DXM before, we're looking at it. We're looking here at our third version of the user interface, what we call V3. V3, third version, okay? And it was designed, please.
Does this sit on top of your own web estate's content management system?
This is our web content management system, yes, absolutely.
You build the sites on it in the first place.
That's exactly right. This is where you manage the digital experience. This is where you create it. This is where you define the rules, define all of the behaviors, the interactions, the integrations, right? And then you deploy it, and then you have an experience that your users, your visitors are interacting with, right? So what I want to show you here is how Crownpeak DXM, Digital Experience Manager, how Crownpeak DXM enforces the governance rules that you've defined, right? The standards that you have defined for your business and your experience and how your users are meant to interact with that experience. So what we're looking at here is a Crownpeak page that I lifted off of the Crownpeak website and brought here so we can interact with it and play with it. But before I play with this version, I want to go back to what I talked about before, the fact that we have the ability to define these experiences and define them in a way where users can't make errors. They can't make mistakes, right? And so the way we do that, everything with Crownpeak is templated or template-based, where you define the experience and then all you have to do is just marry that experience with content. A mail merge operation, if you will. But we also have the concept of components where you can define the experience in smaller parts and drag and drop the experience and build something that makes the most sense. We'll be showing that in just a second. But before that, something that's even more critical is what we call models. Models. A model is that perfect template with maybe an initial state of the content with the right permissions, with the right workflow applied, all of the things that you need so that an author can simply go in and say, well, let me go ahead and create a folder for my site, right? So I'm going to call a folder here, I'm going to call it Empower. Okay? So I've just created a folder. Now this folder, once it shows up, that folder itself has its own models applied to it. I'm going to dive into the folder, and when I go to File, notice that now the menu options have changed, and now I can create an actual experience, a page. This is part of the content folder model itself. So I'm going to create this content page, and I'll call it Empower Demo. Okay? You can see that I've done this before. Okay. So I'll go ahead and create my page. Okay? We'll give it a second. And let me collapse some of my panels here. This entire workspace is designed to be highly flexible. You can customize it. I can move some of the panels around too to optimize my workspace and my canvas. We'll give it a second here to render. Okay, here we go. So this page here is, again, a page that I've lifted from the Crownpeak website. It has a number of different sections and different content. As you can see, it's still, I'm missing an image, so I'm going to populate some of the content with you, and then we'll try to deploy it and see what that experience feels like. So the first thing I'll do, I'll click on Inline Edit. So this is how I can switch modes from preview to inline editing. I'll click on this image, and I'll just select one of my images here. In fact, I'll preview it this way so I can see what my images look like. And here's the image that I want. Okay? Perfect. I'll go ahead and save. And notice I'm getting this error message right there. It's saying that there are some validation errors with my content. This is now governance in action, right? It's preventing me from making mistakes and publishing or deploying content that doesn't meet the standard. So if I switch over to the form, here's the actual error. It's saying that I'm missing the alt tag for my image, which is critical for SEO, right? And so, but there are cases when I just don't know what the alt tag is, and I need to consult with my maybe content author just to put in the alt tag. And I don't want to put something there that's a placeholder and then deploy that by accident. So I'm going to go ahead and say, can you remind me later? Just remind me later, right? And we'll see that in action later on when I try to deploy this page. So I'll leave that like that, and I'll save and see what happens. Oh, there's another error, but this error went away. There's another error, and it's saying that's actually in the metadata. So if I scroll down just a little bit, there it is, metadata. So I'll switch over to this tab, and there's the error. It's saying that I need to put in a title. So again, this is how we configure this specific experience. You have full control over what you want to control and what you want to enable your authors to do. So I'll put in a title. I'm going to make it intentionally a non-meaningful title, because you'll see what happens in just a second. So I'll save. Everything looks fine now. Everything's saved correctly. Let's preview just to make sure that the experience just in general looks fine. So I'll scroll down. There it is, the nice image, and everything looks perfect. I'll go ahead and deploy. So workflow and deploy to stage. And we'll give this a second. So what it's doing now is actually rendering the page. So the workflow deployment is successful, but we can now launch the publishing monitor, and we'll see the publishing progress bar in action. So it's saying in progress. We'll give it a second here to render the page. Now, Crownpeak enjoys what we call a decoupled architecture, where the management of the experience, what we're looking at here, is separate from the delivery of the experience. Okay? So the end result of this is going to be an actual artifact that will be sent over to its final destination, the web server. But notice there's an error. So this error here, let's go back into our folder and see. Yeah, there's the error. Notice what it's saying is DQM workflow error. DQM in DXM, DQM workflow error. We're not passing. There's a threshold that we've set in terms of what's acceptable. What percentage of errors am I happy with as a business, right? And in this case, if we go into workflow, I'm just going to spend a second here to see if we can move this quickly enough. How we're doing on time? Okay. We'll give it a second. So if I go into workflow, we're in the settings area now in the administrator view. And if I scroll down, I have a dedicated workflow that I'm using for this experience. Again, if you remember the screenshots that we were looking at, this is it in action. We'll click here, And notice I've set a threshold percent of 5%, right? We're saying no more than 5% is allowed. Anything more than 5% will trigger that render error, and it won't deploy and it won't generate the experience that I'm looking for. So let's go back and see what the errors are. And if you remember, the advice or the guidance was, look at the DQM panel. So the DQM experience is actually part of DXM, and I have a dedicated panel right there. So this will actually send the content over to DQM, generate the report, bring the data back, and it's now telling me, okay, so that's why I can't deploy, right? I have 7.3% of my content is failing the standards that I've outlined. So what are the issues? So it's saying don't use meaningless phrases like click here. That's bad for SEO, so we'll fix that. The alt attribute, right? I left that blank. Remind me later. So it's reminding me now. And then I put in, remember I put title as the title? That's not good. It has to be meaningful, and it's also saying I need to put the company name in that title. So now if I go ahead and click on Inline and scroll down, so now I'm going to go in and start fixing all of these different issues. So right here, I'll fix that. I'll change that from click here to something more meaningful, such as maybe visit crownpeak.com, if I can spell while standing, for more information, right? Perfect. And then I'll put in an alt tag that's meaningful, so web content management. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to do all, in fact, let me just want to do 2 and see what happens, because it's all happening in real time. Right there, right there. So you notice how the circle is getting more bluer every second. So I have 2 more issues with the title. Let me fix those 2 issues. So it's saying first I need a meaningful title, so I'll just say web content management. And then I'll also put in the company name because that's what it's asking for. So I'll save both. And there it is, all blue, fantastic. So we'll go ahead and deploy. And we'll look at the publishing monitor. By the way, a really convenient link here. This takes me to the web view version of my page, but that web view is just the one within DXM. We haven't deployed anything yet, right? In fact, I can show you what that looks like. So this is the web view. This is coming from Crownpeak still. This is not the deployed version of my asset. So it's helpful because I can see what the experience looks like before I deploy it anywhere else. But now let's see what's happening here with my publishing monitor. In fact, it already published, and it published successfully because my workflow criteria has been met. And now the link should also show up. There it is, the stage. And now we're looking at the published version of my page.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
You know how it's stopped on a percentage of errors? And
Yeah.
you link that up to your priorities, like give a higher weighting?
Yes, absolutely. So in workflow, if you noticed here a second ago, and again, we're adding more features all the time. We'll talk about some of the ideas we have later on from a roadmap perspective. But if I go back to my workflow, you have 2 options currently within DXM. You can either set a percentage, or you can use your priority flags as the actual criteria. Okay? So great question, thank you. All right, so perfect. So mission accomplished. As an author, I was able to create the experience that I'm looking for, but I was prevented from making mistakes at every step in the way, right? And those preventions are dictated by you. You decide what you want to limit and how you want to empower your authors and editors. Now, there's one thing that I also want to show you before we end today's session, which is the first experience that I showed you earlier, right here, okay? And for that one, I'm going to open up our blogs panel. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a new feature that Crownpeak is launching imminently, what we're calling drag and drop, leveraging components, a component-based approach to design, a component-based approach to creating your digital experience. If I scroll down, notice that all the content that we were looking at before is not here. Instead, what we have are these drag and drop zones, right? And in this case, even though this is, you're probably wondering, okay, Fahd, why are you showing us drag and drop? That's not a governance feature. Actually, it is, because with these drag and drop zones, we are dictating what components can be dragged and dropped where, right? So we are governing the experience in terms of where they, for example, you don't want the footer to be placed in the header and vice versa. So this is how we're able to impose these specific rules. So in this case, for example, I can drag and drop a WYSIWYG control here. That's fine. And this is all editable and completely, I can manipulate the content as I see fit. I can also drag and drop an image, but the power really has to do with my advanced components. Now, let me just refresh this, see if it works with me here. Okay, there it is. So let me collapse this other panel. Notice how I can move these out of the way. The entire experience can be manipulated and controlled. So I want to take it out of the way completely. Okay, so these are all of the components that I've pre-built. These components were pre-built in what we call a no-code development experience. No coding whatsoever. All you do is you copy and paste your HTML, and you have a component that can be dragged and dropped anywhere. So right here, I'm going to drag and drop this media block right there. And if I scroll down, I'm going to drag and drop my industries. Notice that they're assigned to the body. This is the body right there. I can drag and drop this one here, but not to the bottom footer. Right? That's governance in action. Right? I can't drag and drop it there, but I can put it there. I can move this one here and so forth. And then finally, down here, we'll put the footer ones just like that. Now, what's really cool is, as an admin, because I'm an administrator here, I can come in and I can make changes, to my assignments. So I can say, you know what, I can drag and drop this one anywhere, right? So this one is all, and sure enough, I can now bring this to the footer where I couldn't do that before. Okay? So just to give you a sense of what governance looks like and feels like in DXM, in Crownpeak's flagship product. And we'll go back here. Let's see if there's anything else I want to show you. Well, we'll end this presentation. So at the very end, in summary, DXM, we believe, embraces governance. It allows you to govern every aspect of your experience and hopefully allowing you to focus on the experience itself. And that's it. Any questions?